Hi, good afternoon. I'm Richard Parlato, and I'm here in our kitchen and on Chautauqua. And this is the second cooking class for the Chautauqua Women's Club. And we're going to be making three simple Italian sauces for pasta. And the first one we're going to make today is a shrimp with cherry tomatoes, garlic, parsley, a little white wine, salt and pepper. I discovered this dish in a trip to Sorrento, Italy, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was it looked so simple coming out of the kitchen that I knew we could duplicate it when we got home, and we've been working on it ever since. But it's a real simple dish, and we'll start now. First thing we want to do is heat up our skillet, get a little hot before we put in our wine, our olive oil. And I'm using cast iron for this particular dish. I like to use it. It's easy to cook with. It allows us to add ingredients and change out things pretty simply. Okay, so I've heated up the skillet. We're going to add some olive oil, probably a tablespoon. I'm trying to remember, I think it was 2 tablespoons. In the recipe. And just get a little warm. You should be a little careful. These things get really hot, so you want to have a pot holder nearby. As you see, we've cut all our ingredients in advance to facilitate cooking today. And once the skillet hits a little bit, we'll put in the garlic. And basically you want to get the garlic just to get the aromas to come up, probably about half a minute to a minute just to get it going. My preference is to use wood utensils for these kinds of things. And we're at probably a medium to high flame. If you have an electric stove, probably 5 or 6, 7. Your electric. Okay, I'm beginning to smell it. And the first thing we're going to do is add the shrimp. And the shrimp you want to get to be pink. You never want it to be translucent. You want it to cook, and it doesn't take long. It only takes a couple of minutes to do this, but you'll see that. And in the meantime, what you should be doing is bringing up your water, bringing up the temperature, boiling. And I put a healthy amount of salt in my pasta water. So I'm not sure if you can really see how this shrimp is turning pink already. And cooking is a lot of, eye reaction to looking at things. For me, right now, it looks like it needs a little bit more oil. So I'm just going to put a little bit more oil in, probably another tablespoon. And as soon as this all turns a nice pink color, I will take it out and then add the tomatoes. don't think you have to be too concerned about overcooking shrimp. There's also a second cooking process that we're going to add it back. So if you don't think you've cooked it enough, there's a second time we'll put it back in with the tomatoes. So it should be fine. So we're close. Okay. I'm not going to remove that. So that's what that looks like. And then we're going to add the tomatoes. As you can see, I took these cherry tomatoes and sliced them in half. It quickens the cooking process, but also gets you a lot more of the tomato juice into the pasta. So this is not going to be a traditional red sauce. It's going to be sort of a pink hue to it when it cooks up. I'm just going to let them sit for a minute. In the meantime, our pasta water is hot. And we want to cook this until the tomatoes start to break down a little bit. So it could take a couple more minutes. But we're still cooking at the same temperature, same medium to high. Okay, so now I'm going to throw my pasta because it's going to take about 12 minutes. And as a kid, we never used to time pasta cooking. We always used to taste it. But for our purposes, I'll put on my timer at 12 minutes. What the box says al dente is supposed to be. So that's what we'll do. Somewhere around 11, I will taste it anyway. And some people put oil in their water. I tend to not do that. I just put salt. And as you'll see later, okay, so those tomatoes are breaking down nicely. I'll be taking the pasta out with this same pasta spoon in order to not throw out the pasta water, because we want to keep the reserve of the pasta water for moisture later in case we need it. Okay, so these are looking pretty good. So another trick that I've learned over years of cooking, throwing back the shrimp, is that colors of vegetables mostly at their peak of cooking, they're the brightest color. And that's when they are also al dente. So if you're making any type of vegetable like that, overcooking them, you lose all the vitality of the vegetable. Okay. So that's added, and now I'm going to add the wine to deglaze the pot. So we're going to cook this till it reduces. Probably reduce by at least half. And at this point we can add salt and pepper. And salt and pepper is to taste. And these are my wife's antique shakers, and this one says, well, it used to say sugar. One says flour, but we know that that's not true. So again, this is going to take a few minutes to reduce in size. When I salt and pepper, I always salt and pepper lightly in the cooking process, and always taste in the process, because you can always add salt, but you can't take it out. I'll be adding the parsley, but I want to cook it. I want it to cook a little bit more. This is one of those dishes that you make at the last minute if you have the ingredients in the refrigerator. It doesn't take long to prepare and or cook. For my taste, it needs a little bit more salt, so a little bit more salt in it. And a little pepper. It's just straight black pepper, ground pepper. Again, I'm going to add a little bit more oil because I like it to be a little bit oily. But again, it's individual on how you do that. So as you can see, liquid is thickening. And we still have about 7 minutes on our pasta. So I'm going to turn down the heat on this to low and wait for our pasta to be done. You probably noticed in the recipe that I don't add Parmesan as a garnish or in the process. In southern Italy, they think that Parmesan on shrimp dishes, no, never do that. Okay, we're back down to about a minute to go with the pasta on the timer, and at this point, I usually test it just to make sure that it isn't cooking fast. The box says it should cook. And I like to leave it a little bit more than al dente, so I'm going to stop it now because it'll keep cooking. And what I do now is just use my pasta fork and take it out and put it right into the pot. Okay, so that's done, and I'll just mix it up in the pot. You can add the parsley. Because it'll get to cook. And this is where you'll determine whether or not you need more liquid or not. In this case, I don't think we do. Now we might just add a little. And a little, I mean by a little, by spoonfuls of liquid. Okay, that's ready to go. So I'm going to move it over to the serving table. And there's our first dish. Welcome back. Our second dish is going to be our vodka sausage dish. Again, we start out with a warm pan, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, extra virgin. Warm up. I buy Italian sweet sausage or mild sausage. Either it comes in the casing or out of the casing, and if it's in the casing, I just take it out and crumble it up. And then we're able to just, once it heats up, get it into a warm pan. Probably needs a little bit more breaking up. And at this point, we wanted to get it browned completely. And reverse of shrimp, no pink. This will take a few minutes, as the recipe shows you. So we're back. As you can see, the sausage is now browned quite a bit. That's what we're looking for. We've started our pasta water again, and that's boiling, so we'll turn that down. And I've broken it up into very small pieces, as you can see. Okay, so now we're going to add our onions. I'm not sure where this dish came from, but we've been making it probably for, I don't know, 12 years. And right now we're just trying to get the onions to break down and get soft. And that'll take a few minutes. We can also add the red pepper at this point. It's just a pinch, just to give you a little touch. Now these last two, the last dish I made, the shrimp dish and this dish, were all done with half pounds of pasta. You can make it for more people by just doubling the recipe and adding a pound of pasta. So this should take a few more minutes. Our onions have gotten cooked. They're a little, sometimes they're a little golden, sometimes they're just transparent. And now we're going to add the garlic. Stir that around a little bit. Give it 20 seconds. As you see in the recipes, I've prescribed De Cecco pasta for all my dishes, and I've learned to really love it because in the making of the pasta, the dyes that they use in machines put ridges and edges on all the pasta, and it makes it hold the sauces much better. And that's what I really like about it. So now I can smell the garlic. I add a little salt and pepper. Add the tomatoes. And let that cook down a little bit. So our tomato has been cooking down. And we have a nice looking base. Our pasta has been thrown in. We're down to about 8 minutes on that. And I think you noticed I stir my pasta when I first put it in, and that prevents it from sticking. That's the deal, I do that. Okay, so now we're ready to put the vodka in. And the vodka acts the same way as the white wine does with the other dish, deglazing the pot, adding flavor, and naturally on all these dishes, the alcohol burns out in the cooking process. And now would be a good time to taste because I added some salt and pepper. And it needs salt. And pepper. Much better. Okay, so now we can add our basil. I've been cooking with a medium to high, and I put it down to lower in the final process just to keep it from overcooking. So it's down to a low flame at the moment. And that's ready, and now I can put it on low and add the cream. And continue to stir. And as you can see, it gets this pinky from the tomatoes and the cream, and a lot of Italian dishes look like their flag. Red, green, and white. Okay. Getting close. So we're back. We've got about a minute left on our pasta. And we'll do the same transition on this dish as we did the last. We're going to move the pan over toward the pasta pot. And bring our pasta back out into the bowl. Into the pot. And I started taking it out this says 12 minutes, and I started taking it out about a little after 11 minutes because I wanted to have that al dente flavor, taste, feel to it. Okay. Again, we're mixing it up. now we'll move it over to our serving bowl. And now we just add some Parmesan garnish. And there's your dish. Hi, so the next dish is our sage, mushroom, shallot, and mushrooms. Sorry. Okay, and I thought I'd show you a couple of knife skills while I do this, and also the use of a mandolin, which is a very sharp instrument. So first, whenever you use a knife like any kind of vegetable or any type of thing you're cutting, you always want to try to protect your fingers and curl your fingers in so the tips of your fingers are not out toward the blade. So I always hold things like this with my knuckle appearing to the blade, and then I'm able to just cut out the edge of this fennel. And if I was cutting the fennel just with a knife, I would use the knife and my knuckle as a guide to keep me from cutting my fingers. But in this case, we're going to use the mandolin to cut the fennel. And it's a simple process, but you want to be really careful because it's a very sharp device. And what I normally do is I use a guard, but in the size of this fennel, I'm not able to use it at the moment. So I'm just basically cutting and it makes it really easy and fast. We're going to heat up our pan again. Notice it's a larger pan because we have more ingredients. So making a pound of pasta this, so that small cast would not have worked very well. And this time we're going to cook with a combination of butter and olive oil. About a tablespoon of that, of olive oil. That melt down. And the first thing we're going to cook is our mushrooms. These are portobellos, and may look like a lot of mushrooms, but once I put it in, when it starts cooking, it cooks down really quickly. Next time, it needs probably 8 to 10 minutes to recommend you be patient and mushrooms because the flavor you get out of them is more than just slightly cooked. So the butter's ready. Throw the mushrooms in. Just stir them around to get them a little of the oil and butter on them. And now we have to be patient. So I recommend you just spread them out around the pan and leave them alone. Leave them for at least 3 or 4 minutes, and then stir them again, and you'll find that the bottom is brown. Okay, so our mushrooms have reduced dramatically, as you can see. They're nice and brown, and now we're going to add the shallots. And I think there's a little bit more oil, so I'm just going to add another tablespoon of oil. Again, this is all I recommend you get a little adventurous with those kinds of things and not just stick to the recipe, because everybody's tastes are different around these kinds of things. And then we want to cook these shallots down till they get translucent like onions. So that's going to take a few more minutes. And at this point, I'll add salt, because salt helps the process in the cooking of breaking down, and a little pepper. mentioned, in the meantime, get your pasta water ready because you want to throw pasta. This particular pasta is penne, and it takes 12 minutes to cook, and this is a pound. So I'm just going to throw that right now. Okay, we'll just let those shallots cook down. So we're on point. Okay, so I'm going to add the garlic. And I lowered the flame to a low to medium. Wait till I get my aroma of my garlic up. I'm going to add the shallots, I'm going to add the fennel. Thinly sliced, it won't take long to cook. And once again, to deglaze the pot, we add our wine. And let that cook until the fennel softens. And this will reduce down. And we'll add the cheese at the end. Okay, so our fennel has softened and broken down quite a bit. I can see from right now we're going to add some pasta water because it doesn't look dry, but it will when I add the pasta. And I'm down to a minute, less than a minute. So I'm going to take my pasta out of the water, and this time I'm going to use a strainer like so, and I will get water from the pasta no matter what. Okay. Stir that up. Now I'll add my fennel greens. This too will break down significantly. And I've already turned the heat off, so there's no heat. And we add the rest of this. Dish. And as I suspected, we're going to add pasta water. Making a mess. And since the heat's off now, I'm going to add the cheese. Mix that in. And I didn't taste it until after I add the cheese, because the cheese will add a bit of salt to it. Okay. And now we're done with our third dish. Move it over to our serving bowl. We'll have the sage, and the sage will cook with the heat of the pasta. And it needs some salt, so I'm going to And those are your 3 dishes for the day. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy.